here. Okay, so this is the this is David Fass at the I'm the trainer at iNetsoft, and we've been doing these monthly webinars on basic topics. And first we did dashboarding topics, then we moved on to some data topics. Now we're doing some reporting topics, and the topic today is creating a modular report. Basically, a modular report is a report that's in essence made up from different pieces, different modules, and the basic reason that you would construct a report modularly is the basic reason that you generally construct anything modularly, which is that you want to create more than one of something, right? So you want to create more than one report, or if you're building cars, you want to create more than one car. If you're writing documentation pages, which is the other thing that I do, you want to create more than one documentation page, and often you find yourself in each of these things that you create having some common components, right? So if you're creating reports, you create a set of dozens of reports, and each of those reports might have a similar header, similar formatting, might have some similar charts in it, and you don't want to create all those things from scratch every single time that you create a report if you've got those same common components in each report. So the idea is that you create those shared or common components, you create them as modules in a sense, and then you just drop those modules into any report where you want to use them. So the concept is pretty basic, and there's a few different ways that you can approach modular report construction or reusable report construction. And so we're going to look at a few of these different techniques, not every possible technique, but just a few of the basics. So the techniques that we're going to look at are using a subreport, that is basically embedding one report within another report. We'll look at using a table style. A table style is a reusable report component that can be applied to tables in any report and also in any dashboard for that matter. And then we'll look at, hopefully we'll get to all this, we'll look at creating and using report beans. Beans are essentially composite report components. In other words, you build up a report component made out of other report components, and then you can drop that into any report that you want. And also meta templates, which is basically the concept of kind of a boilerplate report, which is it's a concept familiar from Microsoft Word, where you can use a template, which is basically the structure of the document, right? So if in Microsoft Word, if you want to create a birthday invitation, or if you want to write a resume or an angry letter to your congressman, there's templates for all those different kinds of things, and we have the same concept in our product as well, where you basically create the outline, the structure of a report, and then you can create any number of reports based on that structure. So, with that lengthy introduction, let's get started. The first thing we'll look at is the concept of a subreport. So, again, a subreport is a report that you embed within another report. Now, if you were just doing a kind of a one-off report, there wouldn't be any compelling reason to do this. If you were just designing a single report, then you just design the single report. Add all the components that you want into the one report, and you're done. But in some cases, you might be creating a series of reports that all include, for example, a common table, a table of data. And in that case, what you might want to do is create that as a subreport and embed that within all the reports where it's needed. Now there are some interesting twists on this, so I'm just going to do an example. I have a Style Studio up here in the background, so hopefully you can see that. And so what I'm going to do is, first of all, create a very simple report, and this report is going to be my subreport. So I'll create a new report, press the new button, blank tabular report. These basic steps of creating a report we've done in previous webinars, so if anyone has questions about any of these steps, feel free to check back at previous webinars where we looked at creating a basic report and so on. And what we're going to do here is we're going to create a table based on a data worksheet. So let me first take a very quick look at that data worksheet, which I created previously. And the data worksheet is called the month comparison worksheet. So I'll just open that up in Style Studio. And this worksheet expects two parameters. It expects a month 1 parameter and a month 2 parameter, and then it does a comparison of those 2 months, the sales for those 2 months. So I'm not going to get into the details of this worksheet, but since it's used by the report, I just want to show you how this works. So let's say I want to compare 2 different months, May and June of 2016, right? I submit those parameters, right? And then the end result of the worksheet, and again, I'm not going to go into all the details of how this was constructed. This is an example from our regular training course. The end result of the worksheet is that I have a comparison product by product, right? So over here, I've got a name column. It's a list of different products. And then I've got a total for the month 1 that I entered. Month 1, I think, was May 2016. The totals for those products for month 2 that I entered, which was June, I think, 2016, right? So month-to-month comparison, and a computation of the percent difference, right? The percent change from month 1 to month 2. So that's what the worksheet does, and that's basically all we need to know about the worksheet, is that it accepts, or it expects, 2 parameters, a month 1 and a month 2, and then it generates this comparison of the sales for those 2 months on a product-by-product basis, right? So that's going to be our data source. So going back to this new report, what I'm going to do is create a table based on that data worksheet. So I'm going to click on the table component here, and we know that if I do that, I get this data binding wizard, which is a handy thing for when you're creating a table initially. And so I'm going to select as my data source, I'm going to go to Global Worksheet, and then select the month comparison worksheet. And that's basically all I'm going to do here. All right, so that's going to be the data source for the report. You can see that, you know, it has the 4 columns from that data block that we computed in the data worksheet, and I'm not going to really do anything else here. So basically the table, when I press finish here, the table that I get in the report is basically just that, the result of that data worksheet. And if I switch this to live edit view, it's going to prompt me for those 2 parameters, right, month 1 and month 2, which I can again enter. I'll just use the same ones that I used before. So you can see that the report is prompting me for the parameters that are expected in the data worksheet. So June and May is going to be my comparison. Press OK. And then the report executes, and the result that I get in the report is just the result of the data worksheet. It's just now contained in a table in the report. And I can do some formatting and things to make this look a little bit nicer, which I'll do in a moment. But before I go ahead and do those things, what I want to do is take a look at the concept of a table style. So this is going to be our first element of modularity or reusability, is the concept of a table style, which is a reusable component. And what I'd like to do is style this table in this report. Now I should point out that this report that I'm designing here, which I'm calling my subreport, is not yet a subreport. It's just a regular report. It only becomes a subreport when I actually embed it within another report. So this is just a regular report up to this point with a table. Now I could style this table on an ad hoc basis, right? I could click on the table to select it, and then in the properties at the bottom, right, I can go to, I could go to the Format tab, and I could do foregrounds and backgrounds for the table. So I could kind of style the colors and the fonts of the table in an ad hoc manner. But the idea here is to create a table style which I can reuse across many tables in many different reports and dashboards. So to do that, I create the table style as a separate component. So I'll go up to the New button at the top left, and here select Component, and then on the right side select Table Style. Right? So table style is one of several reusable components. The other ones that we'll be looking at today are the bean and the meta template. I don't think we're going to do a parameter sheet. We may have, I think we did that actually, I think we did that last month, parameter sheets. Anyway, table style, press OK. And then what that gives us is this editor to create a reusable table style. And in this case, I'm going to do just some very simple formatting. I think what we'll do is we'll set a color for the header row, maybe a background color of some kind of blue background. And then what I'd like is an alternating color scheme for the body rows. Right. Now, I can't simply do that over here, right? So if I click the body of the table here, then I can set a background color, right? So let's say, a green background color, but that doesn't give me alternating rows, right? So that just basically fills in the whole thing with that color. So that's not what I want. So what I want to do is if I want to have a pattern, in other words, some kind of alternating color pattern in the body of the table, what I need to do is define a custom pattern. So I would right-click over here on the left where it says custom patterns, right-click, select new pattern, gives me this little dialog box here, and then what I can do is I can specify that I want to have a pattern that's basically every second column, right? So I select the column option here, start column is 2, right? And that means basically I'm going to define a pattern that applies every second column, starts with column 2, then it recurs on column 4, column 6, column 8, right? So that's it's a repeating pattern, and that's basically it. Right now, you'll notice that here I'm not specifying any information about how it gets colored or anything like that. The actual formatting here is just setting up the pattern. So I set up the pattern that I want, press OK. Right. So now I've got this pattern defined here, second column. You click on that to select it, and now for that particular pattern, I can specify a background such as a let's do like a green background. That's actually that's actually not what I wanted. I wanted alternating rows. I may have said alternating columns, but anyway, that's how you would do alternating columns. But let me modify that, because that's I think my mouth overrode my brain there. And actually, what I wanted was alternating rows. So I'm just going to switch it back from column to row. Start second row, and repeat every nth row. So this means basically second column is going to get a green color. That's what I want, green color, and then the fourth column, sixth column, etc. All right, so this is what I had in mind. Okay, and that's going to be the table style that we're going to save, and that we can then reuse wherever we want it. Now we could do other things as well. For example, for the main header up here, we could set an alignment. We could do like center align or something like that if I can find it. Right, so that's, it's a kind of common thing. You could also set, if you want, the font information. So for that main header, if you wanted a larger font, you could do something like that. Right, so anyway, you can do various settings that all become part of this reusable table style. So once I'm done setting up this table style, I'll save it, give it a name, and I'll call it, I'll just call it my table style. Press OK. Right, and that gets saved together into the so-called style report library. It's basically a zip file where all reusable components get saved, and that includes table styles, it includes beans, which we'll look at later, it includes meta templates, which we'll look at later, hopefully, and also scripts and parameter sheets. They all get saved into the same location, into the style report library, and that's where this got saved as well. The file is called stylereport.srl, in case you're interested. It's basically a zip file, and all this reusable components get saved in there. Okay, so I've got this table, so I'm going to close that editor. I don't need that anymore, and now I can apply that table style to any table, not just this table, but any table in any report or in any dashboard. And so let me go ahead and apply the table style to this table that we created. So I'll right-click on the table, select Properties for the table, right? And I think we've done this before using some of the built-in styles, but basically to apply a style in the table properties, you look for the Style region, click Select Style, and then you just find the style, right? So here's the one that we just created, my table style. It's accessible, to any table in any report or dashboard. You select it, gives you a preview, press OK, and now that style is applied to this table. Okay, so that's the first level of modularity or reusability that we're going to look at, and that is creating a reusable table style. Right? So now you know how to do that. So let's do a little bit more work with this, what will become our subreport. So now that we've done that formatting, there's a couple of other things that I might like to format here. First of all, we have this column here that gives us the % difference between month 1 and month 2, and as you can see, it doesn't have any formatting on it, so the decimal is quite overwhelming. So what I'd like to do is just apply a percent format to that. So I can select, being that I'm in live edit mode over here, and I'm seeing the actual, all the data, I can click on any cell in that column and then just change the format. I'll go down to the Format tab over here and select either a percent format, right? And you can see that that gives me just the percent rounded to the nearest integer value. If I wanted more precision on that, then what I could do is I could do a number format and specify a percent. So I could do something like this with a percent symbol. Right, something like that should work. Right, and that gives me 2 decimal places on the percent, which may or may not be desirable. Other formatting that we could do, of course, we could adjust the alignment and things like that. Maybe for the percent column that might be nice just to align things to the center. For the other columns, I think they're probably okay. We might want to apply maybe a currency format for these guys, so I'll just do that very quickly. Okay, so there's our subreport. Now, there's one more thing that I might like to do here just before we leave the design of the subreport, which again is just this table in a report, and that is rather than have this column say month 1 total and this column say month 2 total, I might like that to have the actual name of the month, right? So I've entered a couple of parameters for month 1 and month 2. Now that I'm looking at this table, I might forget, what I entered, and this isn't giving me any help right now. So, so let's see if we can just make a quick modification there, and in fact that should be pretty easy. If I click on that month 1 total column header and then go down to the Data tab, right, select Formula, then what I should be able to do is write a little formula that will populate that header cell. And the formula that I want to write is basically going to reference the parameter that I entered. So I could type that the formula in here, but just to be more explicit about it, I'll press the Edit button, and then I'll find the parameter value. Right. So if I expand the parameter object here, you can see that there's a parameter called month 1. Right? That recall that is actually, it appears as though it's a report parameter here, but it's actually a parameter in the underlying data worksheet, but the report is aware of it because the report is using the worksheet as a data source, so the report knows all about the worksheet parameters, so I can access that parameter.month1, and basically what I want to do is just use that parameter.month1, the value of that, to set that column header. Right? And you can see that since I'm in live edit, it does that right away, and I'll do the same thing over here for this guy. Select that column header, the month 2 total column header, switch it to formula, press edit, parameter.month2 is going to be used to populate that one, right? And so now I've got the month there. Now, the final thing that I could do here is just apply some better formatting to this. This gives me the year, the month, and the day. It's a little bit confusing because really I'm just entering a month 1 and a month 2, so it's confusing to see this format. So what I'll do is I'll just make a slight change, select those cells, and apply an explicit date format there, and just make it something like capital M, capital M, capital M, space YYYY. That's a 3-letter month abbreviation, and then the 4-digit year. So just a little bit more appropriate for our particular context here. Okay, so that's going to be it for the subreport. So I'll go ahead and save this report. I'll save it as a repository report, and I'll just call it something like month comparison subreport. Okay, so that subreport is done, and now the idea here is that that I might find myself using this subreport in many other reports. That's the reason that I'm doing this as a subreport, that I'm creating this table as a subreport rather than just creating it whenever, creating it anew every time I need it in a report. If my expectation is that I might need to use this table in several reports, I can do it as a subreport and then just embed it in other reports. Now, as I mentioned, there are some tricks to this that both make it a little bit more complicated and a little bit more powerful. So let's take a look at how you would actually do that, how you would embed this subreport in another report, and some of those powerful tools that you can do when you do that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave this subreport up over here. I don't need to. I could close it, but just in case we need to come back to it. And what I'll do is I'll create a brand new report. So I'm going to go press new blank tabular report. And what I'm going to do here is, so this is now a completely new report. What I'm going to do is first add a section to the report. A section is one of these main components that you use in a report along with tables, charts, and crosstabs. There's a section component. And I think we may have discussed this in a previous webinar, but fundamentally a section is just a container, right? You can put any component into a section. It's kind of like a canvas. But it has additional powers. For example, it can behave as though it was a table also. You can put text elements in here. You can bind the section to a data source, and the text elements will then display tabular data. So it's a little bit more powerful than just a, kind of a blank canvas. And in this example, we'll illustrate some of the power that it has. So rather than adding that blank section the way that I just did by dragging it in, what I'll do is I'll click once on the section component. And what I'm going to do is use the data binding wizard to bind this to a data source. And the data source that I'm going to bind it to is the order model, not the worksheet that we did, but I'm going to bind it to our standard order model. And I'm going to, let me just follow my instructions here. I'm going to use only two fields. I'm going to use the order date and the total in this section. Right, so basically what I'm saying is I want to bind this section to the order model, and in the section I want to have text elements that represent the order date and the product total, and the order dates are going to be grouped by month. Right, so basically I'm grouping the date field by month. And press finish. Right, and that gives me this kind of thing. You can see that this section now has a number of bands. It has a global header band that just says date and total. It has a group header 1 band that has the group date. Then it has a detail band, and basically this detail band is going to be repeated again and again for every date that's in that group. And then it's going to have the total for each of those details, and then the total for the group, for the month group, and then the grand total. As it turns out, I don't need all that stuff, so I'm going to get rid of a lot of it. I'm going to get rid of this top row, the main header row. And you can get rid of these rows just by selecting Hide Band. You click on the little plus symbol, and there's an option there, Hide Band, Hide Band, Hide Band. The only one that I'm keeping is the group header, which is the grouped month. Now, in case you're wondering, how you would get those bands back, let's say that you decided that you wanted that global footer, which has the overall total. How would you get that back? What you would do is you would select the section as a whole and right-click and go to Properties for the section, and then over here on the left panel you have all of the possible bands. Right, so you can click on any of these bands and then undo the Hide Band option. Right, so right now the only one that's not hidden is header 1. Right, all the other ones are hidden, and that's the way that we want it for this example, but if you needed to change it, you could change it from there. So let's just take a quick look and see what this gives us. If I do a live edit or if I do a preview, then you can see that basically that group header 1 band expands, right, and it gives me each time, with each expansion gives me another month because I've got that date field grouped by month. So when this section unrolls or unfolds, right, it basically gives me, it gives me the month. The month group. Okay, so far so good. Now what I want to do is I want to restrict this to just the past 12 months, so I'll apply a condition to the section, and I'll just do order date. Somewhere here there's order date. Oh, there, it's the first one. Order date is in range of last 12 months, and that will just cut down the length of this a little bit. Also, I already have that filter on the data worksheet, so the data worksheet is already filtered to give me just the last 12 months, so it makes sense that I would, apply the same condition here. And now you can see that I've got this section. It's basically giving me just the last 12 months. Now, one question that might pop into your mind at this point is why are we even using a section at all? If the goal was just to embed that subreport within this report that we're creating, why not just go ahead and skip the section, just drop it into the to an empty space on the report. The answer to that is pretty simple, and that's that you can't do that, right? When you're using a subreport, it always goes into a section. That's the only way to add a subreport into another report, is to put it inside a section. All right, so you could put it inside a, just an empty section, right? So I could have created, just like I initially did, I could have created, just an empty section, and we could just drop that subreport right into this empty section, right? So what I would do is in any of the bands, I would just select Insert, Special Field, Subreport, and then that would allow me to insert that subreport into the section. But that's not, that's something. That's how you would do it if you wanted to do that. But what I'm going to show you here is something a little bit more powerful, and how you can use some of the the features of a section, the data representation features of a section, to make more powerful use of the subreport. So this is what we have so far. Now what I want to do here is, in each of these bands, in each grouping band of the section, I want to have it show a comparison, that I'm going to be comparing 2 different months. So I'm going to do a few things here. So the first thing that I'm going to do is make these bands a little bit bigger. I just drag down to make the band a little bit bigger, make this text element a little smaller. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a word. Just going to right-click, Insert Basic Element Text. Whoops, there it is. Keep losing it. Let's see if I can. I'll just do it this way. Right. I just want to write the word versus, and because what I'm going to have here is a comparison of 2 months, so I'm going to do this date versus, and then I want another date here, which is going to be the next month, right? So I want to have here like 2015 September versus 2015 October, right? So in order to do that, what I need to do is define a new field that gives me the next month, right? And all this is not really part of modular design. This is just some interesting stuff that you can do in a section, but still relevant. So bear with me a moment here. And what I'll do is I'll find the order model. And for the order model, which again is the data source that's being used by this section, I'm going to do create calculated field, and I'll create a field called next date, or maybe call it next month. And it's going to return a date. And basically what I want to do, I'm going to write a little script here that basically uses a function called dateAdd. And dateAdd takes an interval, an amount, and a date. And so the interval is going to be a month. I want to count one. I want to count 1 month. So the second parameter is going to be 1. Right? So the first parameter is the interval, which in this case is month. It's represented by an M in quotes. The second parameter is 1, meaning that I want to count 1 month, and I want to count 1 month into the future from a particular date, which is going to be the date that I have in this field called order date, which is part of the data model. So basically what I'm doing here is I'm just writing a little script that will create a new field that will essentially be part of the data model. It's not really part of the data model. It only exists for this particular report, but it'll look as though it's part of the data model. And this new field is going to be called next month, and it will have a date that is exactly 1 month into the future from whatever date I have in the order date field. So pretty basic. So that's my script, and if I expand that order model down here, I'll find that next month field now listed as part of the order model. And so what I'll do is I'll just drag that into the section, right? And there's a couple more things that I have to do. You'll note that it's only giving me the year, and that's because I haven't grouped it yet by month. So what I would do is down here in the binding panel for the section, I would just go over to the dimension properties, right, where it says edit dimension here, this little button next to next month, and just change the grouping level to month. So now I've got a comparison of, again, these are just text elements, so it's not, right, it's not, I'm not actually comparing any data here. These are just grouping fields, and it's just giving me the month groups. But at least it's illustrating that what I expect to have here is a comparison of 2 months, 2015 September versus 2015 October, and then on, comparison of 2 successive months. So that's what I've set up in the section. And the last thing that I want to do here is I want each of these comparisons to appear on a separate page. So I'm going to introduce a page break. And I can do that by going into the section properties, right-click on the section, select properties, select the group header 1. Wait a minute. No, it must be group header 2. So this is, yeah, this became called GH2 now because I introduced another group. So GH2, select header 2, group 2, and select new page before. All right, and so basically what that does is it just pushes each band, each grouping band onto a new page. Right. So far I haven't used my subreport. That's what comes next. So far what I've illustrated is just grouping within a section. I've set up some groups within a section so that I've got these bands that, that basically compare 1 month against another month. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the subreport that I already created into this band. And what I can do, remember that in the subreport we have those two parameters, month 1 and month 2. I can use these values from the section that's hosting the subreport. I can pass these values into the subreport, right? So that the instance of the subreport that appears within this band will be filtered to do a comparison of these two dates, whereas the instance of the subreport that appears within this next band will be filtered differently to represent the comparison between these two dates, right? So in each band, I'm going to pass a different set of date parameters into the subreport. So that's kind of the powerful thing that I wanted to show you about using subreports within a section. Is that the section can pass parameters into the subreport so that you get different representations of the subreport in the different bands of the section. So let's go ahead and add the subreport into the section. What I'll do is right-click on the section, select Insert, Special Field, Subreport, and that turns the pointer into a crosshairs. And then I can click anywhere in here, and it will add a subreport. Right? And I can move this around if I want to make a little bit more space. Move the subreport component down, and what I need to now do is specify that I want to use the report that we created before, this month comparison subreport, which, you know, again, up to this point is just a regular report. I want to use it as a subreport within this section that we've designed. So I right-click on that subreport object, select Properties, and over here under the subreport tab, I have to select which report I want to represent here. So I'll browse for the report, and I have to find the actual report template, which should be in a folder called classes/templates in the server, in whatever my working repository is, which by default is this location, web apps SREE, whoops, web INF, classes, that's my Style Studio's current working repository, and in there I'm going to look for this templates folder, and I should be able to find in there this month comparison subreport that we created previously. So I'll select that as my subreport, and then what I need to do is I need to go to this links tab. It's the next tab over here, press links, and you can see that now that I selected that subreport, this dialog box has already looked into that subreport, and it sees that there's two parameters in there. In that subreport, there's a month 1 parameter and a month 2 parameter, and all I have to decide is what values from the hosting section I want to pass into those parameters. So it's pretty obvious what I want to do here. Into month 1, I want to pass the order date field. Right, that's this field over here in the section, this grouped section band. Right, so the order date field, and into month 2 I want to pass next month. Right, that's this field, right, this grouped date field over here. So what will happen is each time the grouping band of the section is rendered, it will pass these parameters, right, from that particular band, so in this case 2015 September, 2015 October, into respectively month 1 and month 2 parameters in the subreport. And then of course the subreport in turn will pass those parameters into the underlying data worksheet, and it will bring back the data for those 2 months. And so within this section band, I'll just get the comparison for those 2 months. So let's try it out. Press OK. And what I'll need to do is I'll actually need to do a preview to see the result. All right, so even though I'm in live preview mode here, I'll turn that off because it's not helping me right now. And what I'll do is do a full preview by pressing the preview button. And it's going to generate the report, and you can see here's page 1 comparing September and October 2015, right? And I get a subreport of instance of the subreport comparing those 2 months. Right? If I go to the second page, right, here's October versus November 2015, and the instance of the subreport that I get here, again, because the section is passing these parameters, these date parameters, into the month 1 and month 2 parameters of the subreport, so that gets filtered to give me those 2 months, and so on for every page. Now there is one issue if you were to go all the way to the last page. There's a blank page there that we can deal with, but I'm not going to worry about that right now for reasons of time. But basically what you've seen here is kind of a basic illustration of creating a report, a subreport, and then reusing it by putting that subreport within a section and filtering the instances of that subreport in different ways based on the data in the particular bands of the section. So that's our first, or I should say our second example of reusability or modularity. The first was creating a table style. The second is reusing one report within another report by making it a subreport within a section. Okay, let's save what we've done so far here. I'll just call it month comparison report. Again, feel free to ask questions if you have them. Month comparison report. Okay, so let's then move on and take a look at the next kind of reusability that we're going to talk about, which is the concept of a report bean. Right, so a bean, as I mentioned before, is basically a composite report component. It's the kind of thing that's useful if, for example, you have a header that you put at the top of every report, and the header has, let's say a logo and company information, the company address, contact information, that kind of stuff, right? So rather than add all that stuff into the header every time you create a report, it's much easier just to create it once, and that's the concept of a bean, right? You would create a report bean that has all the information that you want, and then you just drop it into any report where you want that information. And the advantage of that is twofold. First of all, it's a lot easier at the time that you're creating reports because you don't need to recreate all this stuff again and again. You just find the bean and you drop it in. It's also much easier to maintain because let's say that the company moves locations, so the company address changes, right? So that would be a real headache if you have, if you have 200 reports and you then have to change the, the company address or email or whatever it is in all of those 200 reports. That would be terrifying. But if you've done it as a bean, right, if you've made use of the reusability of a bean, then you just have to change it in one place. You just change the bean, and the change automatically propagates to every report that uses the bean. So, so you get multiple benefits out of using a bean. So let's take a look at how we can do that. So let's go ahead and create a bean, and basically this bean is going to have it's going to be the report title and then some information about when the report was created. So to create a bean, again, this is a independent reusable component, so what you do is you go to the New button, and again, I'm leaving all the other things that we've done open here, but you don't have to. Select Component, create a new component, select Report Bean, it's the top one there, press OK. And you get what appears to be a blank report page. There are a few differences. For example, you'll notice that when you're creating a bean, there is no header or footer to a bean, right? You just have the body. So that's different than a report. And obviously also if you look up at the top here, the icon for a bean looks different than the icon for a report in the tab, so that gives you a clue. And so what we're going to do is we're going to create a very simple bean here, and it's just going to have a text element. So I'll add a text element up at the top, and text element is going to say report title, and I'll make it bigger and centered. Okay, so there's report title. Now you may wonder why, if you haven't seen this example before, why not have it say the name of the report? Why not have it say month comparison report or something like that? The reason, of course, is that we want to use this bean in many different reports, so it would be stupid for us to, to set this to the name of an actual report. We just want to leave it something generic, and then whoever uses this bean, whenever they drop it into their own report, they can change that title. Now we'll see that there's a trick to that, which we'll get to. And then below that, what I wanted to have is another text element that says created on, text element created on space maybe colon created on, and I'll align that to the center. Pardon me, align center. And then I want to have another text element. And in this text element, I want to put today's date. Now, the naive way to do that would be to just, type in today's date, whatever it is, September, I don't know, is it 16th or 17th, something like that, right? But obviously that's not a great idea because, if I type that as a piece of static text, then it's always going to be the same, right? So whenever anybody uses this bean and drops it into the report, it's always going to say September 16th, 2016, and, it's going to be, not make a lot of sense if they're generating the report, let's say 5 years from now. What would that mean? So what I want to do is I want to have the date dynamically generated. So whenever the report is executed, I want this text element to show the date as of that time when the report has been executed. And the way that you do that is, one way to do that is by using a special code, which is a D in curly braces. Capital D in curly braces will insert the current date into a text element. Now generally you want to format a date, because if you don't format a date, you're going to end up with some long date string that has the year, the month, the day, the minute, the hour, the second, the time zone. It's got a whole bunch of stuff. So generally what you want to do is you want to add some formatting constraint on that date. So let me edit this. Oops. Edit. And the way you do that is by just adding a second parameter following a comma. So it would be something like D, comma, and then I'm just copying this from the training guide. It'll have the 2-digit month, the 2-digit day, 2-digit year, and then a 2-digit hour, 2-digit minute, and 2-digit. That's it. And then, sorry, no seconds, and then just AM or PM. Right. So this format, which it might be hard to see on my screen, but basically it's capital M /DD/YY space HH colon MM, and then an A space A, and then the closing curly brace. And so basically this is just specifying a format. If you're for those who are interested in how what the possibilities are for these formats, it's in the documentation. You can look up a date format, and it basically relies on the Java simple date format syntax. So you can construct all kinds of different date formats by mixing and matching these symbols. But anyway, this is the format that we want our date to appear in, and I'll just align that to the center. All right, so basically this is going to be my bean. It's got a title, it says created on, and then it's going to have the date. Now, there is one critical thing to know about using this kind of date formatting, where you put the capital D in curly braces and then a format string like this. And the critical thing that you need to know is that that only works in the header or footer of a report. So if you were to use this kind of syntax, create a text element in a report, in the body of a report that looks like this, it will not be converted to the actual date. It'll just appear exactly the way you typed it. Only if you put this this kind of construction in the header or footer of a report will it be substituted with the actual date. Now, and that's going to work for us because in fact we're going to put this bean in the header of the report. So this bean will be in the header of the report. So this this string that we constructed for the date will in fact be substituted with the actual date. So that's our bean. Now we're going to find out in a second that there is a problem, but let's just go ahead and save this bean. And again, this gets saved into the style report library, that file that I mentioned before, stylereport.srl, that contains all these reusable components. And I'll just call it header bean. And that gets saved in a moment or two. Okay, and let's just see what the problem with this is. So I've got that bean. Let's go back to our report. And my goal, I'm back here in this report, the one that contains the subreport. And my goal is to put that into the header of the report. I want to use that bean in the header, and probably then I'm going to go ahead and use that bean in many other reports. The first thing I want to do is just make this header a little bit bigger, make sure that there's enough room for the bean. So I'll just make the top margin a little bit, maybe 1.25 inches. I think that's enough room. We'll find out in a second. And then into that header, I want to add the bean. So the way that I would add the bean is I go to the toolbox, find the bean component over here. It's in the special region. Grab that bean component, drag it into the header of the report, and then it will prompt me to select which bean I want to put in the header. So obviously I want to use the bean that we just created called header bean, press OK, and there it is. Right, and so that's using that same technique, I can put that bean into any report, and hence I've got reusability. I've got this modular report component that I can use in any other report. And beans aren't restricted only to text elements. In this case, this bean is all text elements, but you can also put images into a bean. You could put charts and tables into a bean, right? So a bean could be more elaborate than just this. If you had a let's say a block of a report, like let's say every report that you're designing had the same first page with the same components on that first page, you could design that as a bean, add all those components into a bean and then just drop that bean into all those reports. After we're done with the bean example, I'll show you, there's another way to handle that as well. But anyway, so here we've got the bean. Now what's the problem? I mentioned that there's a problem. The problem is that as the report designer now, I've used this bean in my report, but there's no way for me to set the, to change the text here from report title to the actual title of the report. Because if I right-click on the bean, and if I select properties, you'll see that there's no properties that I can actually change. Clearly, that's a problem. So what did I do wrong? What I did wrong is that as the bean designer, I forgot to expose that property, the text property of the title. Right? I need to expose that property so that report developers can modify it. So what I need to do here is I need to go back to the bean definition, which I handily kept open over here. Go back to the bean definition, and what I need to do is I need to somehow make this text element, the report title, editable by report designer, by the individual report designer. So to do that, I go up to the report menu. Again, I'm in the bean definition here, not in the report. I'm in the bean. I go up to the report menu, select bean definition, and I need to find that text element. All right, so that could be a little bit tricky if you have a lot of components in the bean, because here I have text 1, text 2, text 3. How do I know which one I need to modify? So I'm guessing it's probably text 1 because that's the first text element that I added. But if I wanted to be a little bit more confident about that, what I would do is I would just change the ID of that component. So just right-click on that component, go to Properties, and change the ID to something like title. All right, and now if I go back to report bean definition over here, now I've got this component called title. So now it's amply clear that that's the one that I need to modify. And so the property that I'm looking for here is the text property. Right? The text property is the contents of that text element, and that's what I want to expose to report designers. So I select that property, add it over here by pressing the arrow. I can give it a name like report title. Seems like a good name for it. Right? Report title is the name of the property that the report designers will see. Report title. Right? And basically, by doing that, I'm not now saying that I want that particular text element to be able to be modified by report developers who use this bean. Press OK, save the bean. All right, and now if I go back to the report, once I save the bean, go back to the report, now I should be able to modify that title. Right? So I can right-click on the bean, select Properties. Now you see that there is a property available that I can modify. It's called a report title. And I can add over here now whatever I want that to be, such as month comparison report. Okay, so press OK. All right, and so now that says month comparison report, and I can go ahead and save this report. And when you save a report that contains a bean, properties that you modify within the report are saved with the report. In this case, the title here, right, this text that I changed is saved with the report, and then when the report is generated, it's read from the report definition. Properties that you don't change from the bean are read from the bean definition. So basically, at the time that the report is generated, when a user opens this report in the repository, it's going to read this report title. It's going to read it from the report definition, and it's going to read the rest of the stuff from the bean definition. And just to illustrate, that's how it works. If I go back to the bean definition, and let's say I decide to change this text here in the bean definition, to something like enter report title, enter your own report title, just to make it a little bit more explicit. And then let's say that I go over here and I change the color of this text. Let's let's see if I could do that. Can I do that from here? Foreground, let's just say I make this text blue. Right, so I've made a couple of changes to the bean definition. If I save that bean definition, and then I go back to the report, you can see that the change that I made to the bean definition affected the properties that are not modified within the report, right? So the color of these elements, which these elements are not modifiable within the report, right? So that was propagated from the bean definition, but the title remained the same, because once you make a change to a property of the bean within the report, that property is then always read from the report definition. So, you know, making that kind of change to the bean is no longer going to affect the report. Okay, so that's an example. So now we've seen 3 different kinds of reusability: table styles, subreports, and beans. So let's just move on to the fourth of the, I mean, there's more that we could say about beans, but I think you get the gist of it. So let's just move on to the last of the types of reusability or modularity that I wanted to talk about, and that is the concept of a so-called meta template, which is basically a boilerplate report. It's again like similar to the concept of a template in Microsoft Word, or you know, many other products of that nature. So let's see how we would construct a meta template and then build a report based on the meta template. So at this point, I'm going to close everything that we have here. And I'm going to go ahead and create a new meta template. So I'm going to press the new button, select component, and select tabular meta template. And while I do that, I'm just going to page forward. And okay, so I'm going to select a meta template, press OK. And again, what I have here looks like, it looks like a report page. And in fact, a meta template does have headers and footers and body. So in almost every sense, setting up a meta template is just like laying out a report. There's one special thing, though, that I'll have to point out, and that is this object here called an editable region is a very important part of creating a meta template. Oh, there's a question. Let me see. Oh, okay. A silly question, but let's see what it is. Space in the name when you save, and sometimes you don't. Yeah, and no, that was just usually my own preference is not to use spaces, but in all these examples, I don't think it matters. So the bean name can have a space in it. Report names can have spaces. Worksheet names can have spaces. But there are some instances, like trying to think of, for example, when you're creating worksheet data blocks that you intend to reference using scripts, sometimes it's handy not to have spaces in those names. So so it's kind of I've kind of become a bit maybe conservative or fearful of using spaces sometimes, but in most cases spaces are fine. It's just sometimes I just by habit avoid them. But I don't think you should worry about using spaces. I think the other place maybe where I didn't use a space was in the ID, right, of the report component, and there I wonder if it even lets you use a space. Let me just see. What if I, oops, because I could see where that might make problems. So let's say my text. So will it let me use a space? Yes, it does let me use a space, but now here's the problem. I wonder if I go ahead and script this. Right, so there's the component, my text. Yeah, so you see it has to introduce a weird, so like if I wanted to script this in the, let's say the onload handler, I want to change that text to this is some new text. So it does handle that space, but it has to do it with a kind of a clunky syntax. Right, so if I do that and then I preview the report, right, so that works. So that's not a problem. So you could actually do that. However, my preference would be to avoid that by doing something like this, because then look, right, so if I change the ID to my text like that, and then if I go ahead and script, right, so now I've got this a component called, right, so this isn't going to work anymore. Now I've got this component called my text, right, so the syntax becomes much much easier. So if you have a space in the name, then it has to introduce this clunky syntax that says, report, bracket, my text in quotes and everything. If you don't use the space, then you get, much nicer syntax to script with. You just use the name and then followed by dot and whatever property you want. So that for me would, kind of like, how badly do I really need to have spaces in the names of, in the IDs of report components? I don't need that at all, right? I mean, because the users are never going to, never really going to see what I called the report components. It's only for my own convenience. So, since I find it more convenient to be able to script this way, my preference would be to leave out the spaces. But again, it does work both ways. So, okay, so with that aside, let me just jump back into so where am I? Right, so here I have my meta template open. Again, the icon for a meta template is different than, the icon for a meta template is different than a report, and also down in the bottom left, it says meta template, so you know what you're dealing with. It is, if you're just looking at the page, it's very hard to distinguish it from a report. Okay, so, pardon me. So the first thing that we're going to do is I'm going to set the page layout for the meta template, because my idea here is that I want to have a meta template with 3 different page regions, kind of a top region, and then 2, actually 3 regions, but 2 regions side by side on the top, and then 1 region on the bottom. I want to divide the page up into different regions. You could do that with a regular report also, but I just illustrating it with a meta template. So I'm going to make the page a little bit wider by switching to landscape, and then by changing these properties here. Header from edge is going to be 0.25. Footer from edge is going to be 0.5. And it's just going to buy me a little bit more room. Okay, press OK. Okay, so I have a little bit of a wider page, and then what I want to do is I want to divide this page into different regions. And to do that, what you do is you go into Layout View. It's up here at the top. There's a button, Layout View. Now this is not a requirement, and in fact, many reports you probably create without using Layout View at all. It is available for report pages as well, so it's not only a meta template thing. But if you click on this, then what I can do is I can divide up the page by doing something like insert rows columns, 1 row after selection. Right, so now I've got 2 regions on the page, here, and then I can divide this region into 2 columns like that. All right, so that gives me my 3 regions that I want to play with. Now, what's the, what do you get by doing this? And again, you could do this within any regular report also. What you get is that you've got these distinct regions on the page, and basically you can put components independently into these different regions. So stuff that you put into this region will never end up in this region, and stuff that you put in this region will never climb into that region, right? So these are impermeable boundaries, and sometimes that's handy for laying out reports. Where the report page needs to have these distinct regions. Now you might wonder, well, what happens if you put like a table in this region of the report, and the table has 1,000 rows? Where do all those rows go? And basically what happens is that the region just grows. It expands downwards for as much space as is needed. So if the table has 1,000 rows, this region where you put the table just expands down and down and down and down and down, as across pages, might go across 20, 30 pages until eventually that entire table gets rendered within that region, and then following that, then this region will be rendered, right? So the regions, the boundaries cannot be crossed, but the boundaries do inflate to contain whatever you put in them. So that's all we're going to do here. We're just laying out kind of the basic page layout, and then I can toggle out of that mode. Now I'm back in the basic design mode. And what I'm going to do here is going to add some editable regions, right? So now you may wonder, why do I need to do that? Why can't I just proceed like this, right? So I kind of laid out this boilerplate report that has different regions like this, 1 region here, 1 region here, 1 region there. Why can't I just be satisfied with that and then proceed ahead to save this, and then different users can build reports based on that. And I'll show you very quickly why that's the case. So if I save this meta template, and I'll just call it template 1 for lack of a better name. Right, so I've saved this meta template. Well, in a moment. Right, so now the meta template is saved. Again, it's saved into that same style report library. And now let's say that a designer comes along and designer wants to build a report based on that meta template. Of course, I could add, I could add other stuff to this meta template. Like, let me just do that just to illustrate that it doesn't have to be totally blank. So I'll just put a text element, hi there, and I'll put an image over here, just to illustrate that we could have stuff in this meta template. Let me see if I can find an image. Very quickly find an image. Where would I find an image? My computer is just hanging for a moment. Let's see. Any images, anything? All right. Probably taking too much time. Sorry. Recent items. Where's my downloads? Surely there must be an image here somewhere. Otherwise, I'll just give up on it. Okay, I'm just going to give up on it because this is just taking too long. I'll put something other than an image in there. Except now it's hanging. Oh, sorry, give me one moment. It'll hopefully figure itself out. Oh dear. I might have to kill this. It's very annoying. I don't know, it seems to be stuck. Okay, bear with me a second. I'm just going to try to stop this and restart it. It's not listed here. Oh, it closed. Okay. Okay, let me get out of here. Okay, you can get rid of the image. I'll just put something else there. I'll just put a checkbox there. Okay, so I have stuff in this meta template, and so I'm going to save it, template 1, and then as a report developer, let's say that I go ahead to create a new report, so I go to New, right, and I'll see that any meta templates that you create are listed here, right, so I can build a report based off of any of these meta templates. So there's template 1. Click that, and now as the report designer, of course, I want to add stuff to this report, right? So I've just created this new report with this page layout that's inherited from the meta template, and in fact, when you build a report based on a meta template, you'll notice that there is no, in the report itself, you can't do the page setup, right? The page setup is inherited from the meta template, so that's why that's grayed out over there. But the problem is that I can't add anything, right? It won't, if I try to add a chart or anything like that, it doesn't work. Right, so I really can't do anything with this new report that I created based on the meta template. And that's where those editable regions come into play. So basically, when you design the meta template, you need to add those editable regions wherever you want the report developer to be able to add components. So let me close this because this is not very useful. And so what I need to do is, if I want the report developer to be able to add components, I'm back in the meta template design. If I want the report developer to be able to add components, I need to put those editable regions wherever I want such a component to go. And I'll just try to wrap this up really quick because I'm over time, sorry. So editable region here, editable region here, editable region here, and I'm going to add one more editable region because I want to put the bean that we created before, I want to put it in the header of this meta template, but keep in mind that I do want the report developer to be able to change the title of the bean, right, where it says report title. I want the report developer to be able to change that to the title of the particular report, so I need that to be editable as well. So I need to put an editable region up here before I put the bean in there. And now into that editable region, I can drop the bean so that the bean will be part of the meta template, but it will be editable by the report developer. So I'm going to put the bean in there. Right, so the bean is inside an editable region, meaning that this title will still be editable by the report developer. So now I'm done with my meta template design. Right, and of course I could add, again, I could add any other components that I want in here, either inside or outside editable regions. So for example, let's say that I wanted the I want to put like a basic chart into this editable region so that the report developer will be, kind of be forced to work with that chart, because I know that I want a chart to be there. So I could do that. I can put a chart into the editable region, right? And I could leave it blank, or I could even go ahead and, hook it up to data. Let's say that I just wanted to have some basic, some basic data in there so that the report developer has something to start with, right? So I could throw something in there. Could do the same thing, again, inside or outside editable regions. I can put stuff. The difference is that stuff that I put inside an editable region in the meta template will be modifiable by the report developer, and stuff that I put outside of an editable region will not be modifiable. So for example, if I can drop a piece of text in there, is like, can't touch this. Right, so that's outside of an editable region. So now if I save this meta template, just to wrap up here, save the meta template and go ahead and create a report based on the meta template, based on template 1, right? So you can hardly see the difference, but this now is the report, right? So let me close the meta template, right? So here's this new report that I created based on the meta template. You can see that I've got these editable regions. Inside an editable region, I can do anything I want, anything that I would ordinarily do when I'm designing a report. I can put all components and stuff. You can see that I've got this chart that's inherited from the meta template, but I'm not stuck with it the way it is. I can modify the chart because it's inside the editable region. I can change the chart however I want. I could delete the chart if I want, right? If I don't like that chart there at all, I could delete it, right? So because it's in an editable region, it's up to me as the report developer what I want to do in there. And the same thing with all the other editable regions. This text that I put outside the editable region can't do anything with that. That's completely inherited from the meta template. And as far as the bean is concerned, I can't change the properties of the bean that are inherited from the bean, but I still have access to that report title property, so I could change that to whatever I want. So anyway, that's a quick tour of report modularity, report reusability. So I'll stop there rather abruptly, sorry, and I'll just let me see if you have any questions about anything. Sorry, I went over time. Okay, let me just see what you wrote. Okay, good. Well, thank you for sticking it out for the full length. I appreciate it. So I'll wrap up there. I'll stop the recording, and if any of your colleagues are interested in watching this, it should be up on YouTube, and the link will get mailed out on Monday or Tuesday. So thanks again, and have a great weekend.